Week 45, day 3. Well, it's not over yet. We still have to get through crucifixion. And so we see these not just in the Gospels, but we're also going to see some of this in the Psalms. So today's readings include Matthew 27, verses 32 to 66, Mark chapter 15, verses 21 through 47, Luke 23, verses 26 through 56, John chapter 19, verses 17 through 42, and then Psalm 22. Today we face crucifixion. After all that the authorities have gone through to silence Jesus, it looks like their plan has worked. And so Jesus will be crucified. Crucifixion, historically, is one of the most brutal means of killing another person. The person who came up with it, I would not want to see the inside of their minds. Because not only was it a means of putting someone to death, but it was a means of doing so in such a way that it prolonged their suffering. It was torture, physically, and shameful psychologically. Because despite all the pictures and the artwork that you're going to find in churches, Jesus was not wearing a loincloth. People were hung naked. So there was nothing to hide them from the eyes and scrutiny of anybody out there. And so there was a shameful aspect of it, being put on a pole, raised up above other people so that there was no way that you could be hidden from eyesight. And that's before we even get to the pain that was involved, being nailed through the hands or wrists and through the knees, or not the knees, but the ankles or feet. This was done in such a way so that you could not stand up, you couldn't get a full breath, and so it was shallow breathing. And so it would avoid vital organs, which would eliminate a quick death, and prolong the suffering and the agony for sometimes days, even a week at times. The incredible thing, Jesus being God, we often during Lent we talk about Jesus' final words on the cross. Even the act of being able to speak, he would have had to try and raise himself up on the nail that was through his feet in order to get enough breath to be able to speak. It's no wonder that they're small, pithy little things that he says. This was an agonizing, painful way to die. In Psalm 22, the gospel writers, they don't give us a lot of details. If you really look at it, there aren't a lot of details. They talk about he's nailed and he's put up, but that's about it. Because every one of their readers would know what crucifixion was like. They would have been firsthand witnesses to crucifixion because it was the way in which the Roman Empire put down insurrection. And it said that even when Jesus was a child and before that, there had been an uprising in Galilee, and thousands of Galileans had been crucified along the roads so that people could see what would happen if you went against the great power of Rome. The people there were not in question about the terrible death that was crucifixion. Interestingly enough, it's a psalmist that gives us the details. When you read Psalm 22, and it talks about pulling hair out of his beard and being able to see his ribs, this describes, for us modern readers who have never, fortunately, witnessed crucifixion in person, we can truly understand how horrific it was. None of us likes to think about bad things. None of us likes to think about pain or suffering, especially for ourselves, but even for others, and in this case, for our very God. But it's important for us to recognize the lengths to which Jesus would go. Because Jesus did not go to the cross for himself. Jesus had never done anything wrong. He had never sinned. He had never been cruel. He had done nothing against God or God's law. He went on that cross because he was the perfect Lamb of God. He was the ultimate sacrifice. And his sacrifice, unlike those of the unblemished animals that had been offered for hundreds of years, first in the tabernacle courtyard and then in the temple, despite all of those that would wash away sins for a season or until the next sin had happened, Jesus' sacrifice would be once and for all. In prayer, I often talk about how Jesus spread his arms and demonstrated his love in an embrace for all the world. It was a painful embrace, but he did it, and he did it for you, and he did it for me. Praise be to God.